I asked Eddie if he wanted me to introduce him, and he said yes. So, actually, I've known Eddie for a long time. I actually met him after the first Rocky Mountain Reseller Conference. He went to breakfast with Paul and I knew immediately this dude knows what he's talking about. So if you do know who he is, you know that that's true. He knows what he's talking about. He does a lot of volume on the Amazon platform and a lot of other platforms. So guys, give it up for Eddie Levine. Just take your time.
Thank you for the subpar introduction. Appreciate that. Take your walk of shame. Everybody watch Travis's walk of shame. That's all good. How's everybody doing? Good. Everybody's back from lunch. Sorry for the technical difficulty, but that's good because I built up my audience better. Everybody falls in late. It's all good. But as Travis mentioned, my name is Eddie Levine. I started e-commerce at the age of 13 on eBay. That was my very first business. Built that into a six-figure operation by the time I was 15. I was an eBay power seller back then as well, so was doing that business basically for on consignment for people in the local community to sell their products that they no longer wanted or needed. My background comes from the hospitality, IT, and logistics industries. I've worked for several Fortune 500 companies in the past about 10 years or so, so I've gotten a lot of my experience that I use today from those previous roles that I've had. I have a lot of multi-channel experience. In our business today, we operate on about 30 different platforms worldwide. So all the Amazon platforms, both US and abroad, along with some other platforms as well that are outside of Amazon. I'm a frequent traveler, do about 5 to 6 months of traveling per year. I actually just came back to this conference from another conference in Sydney, Australia. So I'm a little bit jet lagged, have no idea what time or day it is, but it's all good. I'm really big on paying it forward, so I really enjoy networking with everybody at the shows, whether it be here or online on Facebook or anywhere really. I like giving back to the community, teaching you guys about what I've learned, some of the mistakes that I've made, helping you basically improve your business to the fullest extent possible. And recently I was just featured in an Inc. magazine article in May 2018, just about the some of the things that I have viewed as the important traits of a business owner. And the specific article that I had in Inc. magazine was understanding the power of no and how to deal with rejection and making sure that you are being extremely honest with your partners and business colleagues from the get-go. So we're going to talk about today 2 key areas of success. 1, being effectively planning and working a wholesale trade show, and 2, understanding how offering value and setting yourself apart in the wholesale model is going to be critical to your success and your ultimate, the way you build your wholesale business. Because nowadays, there are so many sellers who are joining the Amazon platform, and to be able to separate yourself apart from the crowd is how you're going to be ultimately successful. Before I get into that, I want to talk about a few things that I've seen of what not to do at a trade show. These are things that I have seen, or I've tried myself, and I've seen other people do in their business, and I've seen them fail at it. So I want to bring them up to you real quick. But to start from the top, don't go to a trade show without profiling the category. If you don't know that category is going to be good for you to buy into, or you're not comfortable with the category, say it's jewelry or health and beauty or any of the other categories that carry some inherent risks, don't go right into the category unless you know what you're getting into. You want to be very comfortable with the products that you're purchasing. Don't go to a show without researching the vendors early. So when I go to a trade show, and we'll talk a little bit more about this during the presentation, is I have a game plan of who I'm going to target and who I'm going to talk to and what my overall strategy is for each day in there. I'm not going there without knowing who potentially is already exhibiting. I don't go to a show and aimlessly walk the aisle. So I don't go back and forth, every single aisle, row by row, and go booth to booth and say, "Hi, I'm Eddie Levine. I'm from Wholesale Breakthrough. This is what I do." I don't do that because it gets very time consuming. You lose a lot of time, and I don't feel like it's the most effective way to work a show. So don't go to the show with purchasing as your primary objective, which is something that a lot of people, when I talk to them about this, are very surprised to hear me say. And I will talk a little bit more about this as I go into it, but purchasing should be a secondary objective. Relationship building should be your number 1 objective. And again, as I mentioned, don't go to a show and intend or plan on hitting every single booth, because most trade shows have, if not hundreds, thousands of vendors, and you can't possibly hit all of them within your time there. So finding trade shows. You guys want to know about how I go about finding them? There's 3 basic ways of doing it. Here are the 3. Google is your friend. Everyone's heard that term, but here's what I do from the start is I use Google and I go in there and I search trade shows plus not actual plus, but trade shows along with the category that I'm targeting. So for example, if it's toys, I'll go to Google and I'll search trade shows toys or toys trade shows. And odds are I'm going to find on the first few pages at least a handful, if not several dozen different shows that come up for that category that have trade shows. And most categories have numerous ones that you can pick from and attend on a yearly basis. So that's a good way of getting into the few ones just from the start. Second one's expand into the calendar of events for the venues. So if you find a trade show that you want to attend, let's say it's Toy Fair New York, which is held yearly at the Jacobs Javits Convention Center. I'll go to the Javits Convention Center website and I'll look at their calendar of events and I'll figure out what other shows are also at that venue. Because chances are for at least the calendar year, if not several years into the future, they have the events already posted. And chances are, again, that I can probably find additional ones just by looking at that calendar of events that I can plan on attending in the future. Third and final one, once you get in touch with the vendors and you start talking to them and you start working with them, ask them about what other shows they exhibit at. Where else do they travel during the year? Where else do they meet with potential buyers and exhibit their booth? Because you might not have heard the trade show that they're exhibiting at, but I assure you that there's other ones that they're attending at that you just don't know of, that you're just not familiar with, and that gives you an opportunity to not only meet them again, but expand to other vendors and possible business dealings as well. Time is of essence when you're talking about a trade show. Understand that the average show is only 3 to 4 days long. Some of them can be even shorter. I've seen trade shows that are mere 2 days, and it's real quick in and out. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors. So again, going back to my original point, going to a show with the intention of meeting every single person is not the best way to use your time just because there's so many of them there. Vendors commonly have preset appointments. What that means for you is if you go to a trade show and you are doing that thing I was telling you about earlier, just walking back and forth and going randomly up to a vendor and trying to give your initial pitch right from that point, I personally feel you're going to have a harder time doing it because they have a set schedule of who they're planning on meeting and what their day normally looks like and what they're expecting. And for you to drop in on them without a plan or a strategy or without them knowing who you are, you really are counting on them having the time and also patience and willingness to talk to you. And I think that at a trade show, when the stakes are very high and the trade show is extremely busy, you can really have an issue with doing that just at the spur of the moment. You also need to account for logistical time. So what I this is when you plan at a trade show, there is time for you to walk from booth to booth. If you're planning at a show, most likely you're not going to be going, from one booth and then your next appointment is not going to be right next to each other. They might be across the hall, or they might be in a different exhibit hall. They might be downstairs. So logistical time covers the time that you're going to have to spend walking from booth to booth or taking a lunch break, using a bathroom break. And it sounds like it could be minimum amounts of time, but it really adds up, especially when you're trying to maximize your efficiency at the show. Profiling the show vendors. So here's basically how I go about this. When I have a show that I'm going to be going to, there's 2 ways that I get a exhibitor list. One, I'm looking at the website for the trade show that I'm going to be going into. Sometimes they'll have it listed there either in PDF or searchable format, or sometimes you can even download a file from the website, but they'll have it listed there with who's exhibiting at the show. If they don't have it listed on the actual exhibitor page, see if there's an area that you can access by logging in using buyer credentials. Sometimes it's kind of like a locked access and you have to have a username and password to access it. But if that fails, get in contact with the show and see if they will provide you with an Excel list or some kind of list that you can use to profile the vendors and get that done ahead of time. Most of the time I find that they're more than willing to do this or point you in some kind of direction to help you. After I have that list of trade show exhibitors, I'm using software to initially profile based on the vendor name and the brand name, not their price list. Because remember, I haven't talked to them yet. I haven't obtained their price list. I don't have that yet. I'm just getting some initial research done to see if it's a brand that I honestly even want to spend my time going after. So when I say use software, I'm using software like Price Checker 2 or Tactical Arbitrage. We personally have been using Tactical Arbitrage more and more these days because we found the feature set has been drastically improved for the wholesale model, and it really helps us get deeper into the brands that we're trying to target. So I target the brands that I'm going to be exhibiting by their brand name, and I then have it search the Amazon website just for that brand, and it might not be pulling up all of their items under that brand that are available on Amazon, and there might be some items that it pulls up that for some reason it's a false calculation, not exactly the brand that I'm looking for that's coming up on the search results, but more times than not, the results that I'm getting are in fact, the majority of them are in fact the brand that I'm looking for, and it gives me enough information to figure out if I want to pursue that brand or not. So that process of doing that is very time consuming and it's very repetitive. A lot of times if you have a bigger brand, it can take several minutes, if not close to half an hour to get that data pulled from the Amazon website. So I highly, highly suggest you leverage the using virtual assistants or some kind of external resources, so you're not spending your entire day before a show just doing this specific task, because it gets very boring and quite frankly you might fall asleep doing it because it's just very repetitive. But it's a critical aspect of planning for a trade show, in my opinion. Once I have those reports done, when I pull those reports and I can basically see just a general overview of how the brand is doing on the Amazon platform, I use Dropbox or Box. In our case specifically, we use Box for those Excel reports, and I separate them out. So of the Excel reports that I pulled from vendors that I'm targeting, I'm separating them by which vendors are Amazon heavy, meaning which vendors is Amazon the primary seller of, which ones are leveraging the 1P model. I'm separating them by which ones are 3P heavy, meaning that the buy box seller is a third-party seller just like yourselves. And I'm also separating the ones that are mixed, where half their products are 1P, half their products are 3P. That way I can effectively target my approach to each vendor. So if I have a vendor who's very heavy Amazon 1P, well, my discussion with them is going to be very different than if a vendor was Amazon 3P and I was going against potentially a competition that's sitting in this room, because my margins have to be different, my approach is different, the way that I think the vendor has currently operated their business model is very different. So I want to know what their current sales strategy looks like. Why the 50% profitability doesn't matter at this point. What I mean by that is, if you use the software to run these reports, a lot of times you won't have a price list. You won't have the ability to tell it, here's the cost of these products from the specific list that I want to profile. Instead, I'm profiling it by the brand only. So I view the potential, the ROI and the profitability of the products that I'm finding on these search reports at this point irrelevant, because I want to know just what the sales strategy is. I don't care about the profit margins right now, because the cost of my product is likely going to change once I have a chance to talk to the vendor and figure out what my buying strategy is going to be, how much volume I can do, so on and so forth. So I'll get the price list from them and I'll figure out what those costs end up truly being, but it's going to be later. Right now, I just want to see if it's worth having the initial conversation, or if I'm wasting my time by approaching them or sending them an initial email or trying to have a phone discussion before the show. My contact to the vendor is very, very short and sweet. I don't write a huge blurb. I don't write an about me on the website, or about my company on the email, because vendors have a patience for this of merely a few seconds. And I found that this has the best return in terms of getting replies, and a vendor to be willing to meet with me at a trade show. So I very simply, I subject line of what the trade show is. I introduce myself of who I am, and I know that they're going to be exhibiting at the upcoming trade show that I'm going to be at. I ask them for a meeting. I give them the ability to book the meeting with me directly from that email, and I give them a link to my website in the email as well, which I'm basically giving them the option to learn more about me and go to my website if they want to. Some vendors will want to see this, and they'll ask you about it if you don't give it to them. Some vendors won't care, and that's why I have the option for them to just skip by it. If they want to schedule a meeting with me and they're willing to meet with me profiling who I am, that's fine. I'm okay with that, because I want the discussion to be about them anyway. So if they're willing to bypass it, more power to them. But that's an example of the email that I would write to a vendor that I want to meet with at a trade show. How to arrange appointments. So if I go back to that, if I go back to that first slide I had, you'll notice the second line there, it says, please select a time that works for you well here from that link. When they click on that link, they're going to get go to the website with my calendar right here. And this is an example of my calendar that I have set up right now with just 6 of the roughly 12 options that I have set up on there right now. I couldn't grab the whole screenshot for you, but one of the options is trade show appointments. And it allows them to schedule a time on my calendar for only the days of the trade show and in 30-minute blocks only. So them having access to my calendar allows them to pick a time that's convenient for them without going back and forth with me, and they can get it done in one swoop without even replying to my initial email. When they select a time from this calendar, it's going to automatically populate into my calendar, whether you use Outlook, Gmail, it doesn't really matter. It's going to automatically populate. So I'm basically allowing my vendors to build out my day according to the criteria and the standards that I had set up for this particular trade show option. After I have all my vendors who have scheduled the appointments, it gives me a really easy calendar to follow while I'm at the trade show. So this is an example of what my calendar would look like if I was doing a trade show today. You can see that 10 o'clock in the morning starts. I've got 2 vendor meetings. I've got a break that I've built in for myself. So those breaks that you see, 3 of them per the day, one at 11 a.m., one at 2:30, and one at 4:30. Those are breaks that I put into the day before I sent out my calendar to the exhibitors. So they cannot book over my breaks. I'm allowing myself the ability to have a break to catch up, to run to the restroom if I have to get a drink, to do whatever I need to do. That's built in. They can't book that time. They can fill in the rest of the time in this particular case, the day is already full. But if it was something that I had just sent out, all those the blue banks, vendor A, B, C, D, and so on, those would be blank, and those would be the times that they could pick to meet with me at the show. And I've also built in the lunch break as well. But I want my calendar to look just like this for every single day that I'm at the show, because I have a game plan and I have qualified vendors that I know I want to meet. I'm going to have really good engaging conversations with from the start. So again, just to recap, effectively working a show, this is my timeline of how I take these steps. So about 8 weeks before the show, I'm locating and analyzing that initial that initial exhibitor list that I talked to you about, whether it be on the show's site or getting it from them directly. About 4 to 6 weeks prior, I'm scheduling those appointments, and I'm using that calendar app that I showed you earlier. And about 1 week prior, once I have my appointment set, that's when I'm reaching out to the vendors directly and getting their price list, so I can run that before I actually meet with them at the show. And so I know what my margins look like going into that meeting. It's a lot easier to go to this and run, about a dozen price lists per day versus running price lists from every single vendor that's attending a show that majority of them might not even work out for my specific target anyway. So about 1 week prior, I'm analyzing the catalog of the vendors that I'm going to be meeting with at the show to maximize my knowledge of their brand and know what the potential profits look like. Post-show, following up, I cannot stress how important this is and how many people don't do it. When you go to a trade show and you exchange business cards and you have that meaningful conversation, do not expect the brands and the exhibitors to follow back up with you, because they have a stack of business cards like that. I'm not kidding. So they likely will not reach out to you. They won't remember who you are. You need to take the initiative to follow up, explain to them who you are again, and just recap what you talked about. Something that I saw at Canton Fair when I went to China to see what that was like in April is the vendors there would email me after the show, and they would attach a photo of their booth. And they would say, hey, here's the booth that you visited. Thanks for coming by. Just as a reminder, this is what our product looked like. I actually like that quite a bit from the vendor side, because it helped me remember what that conversation was about when I saw the booth that I was literally just standing in. So really helped me jog my memory, but just an example. And remember the don't list. So those things I told you not to do at a trade show, just remember not to do those things when you're actually going to attend one. Talk about vendor reps. They have an extremely large amount of power, I believe, in this field, and we leverage several of them for different categories that we work in. I've listed here some of the benefits of them. They bypass the gatekeepers for you, because they most likely have the relationship with the brand owner already. They're not basically cold calling into the vendor. They already know who they are, and they can sell you without you even having to approach them directly. They act as your salesperson, vetting suppliers for you, and they act as an extension of your company because they're representing you. They don't cost you any money. The vendors will usually pay them directly based on a commission. So based on what you buy, they get a percentage of the sale. So if they're not costing you anything on top of the money that you're spending for the products that you do purchase. They get paid based on how much you buy, so their incentive is there to help you. So they're very used to, in my opinion, if you have a good rep, they're used to going to their brands and their vendors and having that pushback of, oh, is it another Amazon seller? And they're used to figuring out more about you and your company and what you're good at and what your value adds are to be able to sell that effectively to the brand owner and allow you to get a meeting or allow you to buy that brand. So I allow them to be my salesperson. I allow them to be an extension of my team because I want to leverage that relationship they already have with the people that they represent to allow me to get into a brand and sell that. Placing orders at a trade show should not be your priority. This is traditional wholesale. It's not closeout. If you go to a trade show and you find product that you want to buy, chances are that product is going to be available today, it's going to be available tomorrow, it's going to be available next week, and it's going to be available next month. So if you buy that right now and you focus on buying that right now, you're wasting the time I feel that you should be using on building a relationship and figuring out more about the vendor. Spend your time building the relationship. 364 over 1. What I mean by that is I'm more concerned about the 364 days a year that I'm not going to be in front of that vendor than the one day that I am. Because that one day I can buy product and it might be really good for that first initial order, but if that's all I am to them, if that's the only value that I am is to buy product, sell it, and be done, that's not building the relationship. I want to find out exactly how I can help them, how I can really take their brand to the next level and increase the size of their company and the amount of money they make by me also benefiting as well. If you're going to place orders at the show, I encourage you to place orders because there's a show special that you need to take advantage of, which a lot of shows will have, whether it be an extended amount of time to pay, 30, 60, 90, even 120 days in some cases I've seen, or if they have discounts, 5, 10, 20% even. So if there's a reason for you to place an order at the show and there's a show special, I can absolutely understand that. But understand that show specials, even though it's technically a show special, they are oftentimes extended beyond the show. So they could go for a week after the show, maybe the month of the show. You have to really ask the vendor, but a lot of times they'll say it's show specials and you can usually get them up to a few days after the show ends. So keep that in mind. What if the vendor says no? I basically broken this down into two different areas, either two options before the show if they say no, and two options if they say no to you as a reseller during the show. So if I'm doing those initial contacts to the vendor before the show starts and they tell me, nope, I don't want to meet with you, I'm not interested, don't want another Amazon seller, whatever the reason is, it doesn't really matter. I'm engaging them with a phone call. At that point, I'm done with an email because if they've already rejected me over email, me going back and forth with them over email and trying to convince them is almost like being a dead horse because they don't want to talk to you and it's very easy to hide behind an email. So I'm picking up the phone, I'm finding their phone number, and I'm calling the person that responded to me, and I'm trying to get them over the phone to have that discussion. It might only be 2 to 3, 4 or 5 minutes, doesn't matter, but it's a lot harder to hide behind that discussion on a phone call or even better in person if you're at a show versus on an email. You can delete an email, you don't even have to reply. So I try to, up the ante a little bit. Again, before a show, if they tell me no, they don't want to meet with me or don't want me to sell their product, I ask them about their pain points so that I can prepare for the show. If they tell me no and I find out the reasons they don't want to meet with me, I ask them why, and then I still ask for a meeting at the show because I want to try to prove to them that I can solve their pains for them. So challenge for me, obviously, because I have to get past that no, but if I know what they're looking for and specifically what they're after, I want to meet with them because I want the potential to try to turn that no into a yes at the actual show when I'm there in person. If you go to a show and they haven't rejected, or if you're profiling them and they haven't rejected you prior to meeting with them at the show and you go there thinking you have a really good opportunity to get in with them and start selling their products, and during the show, they tell you, you know what? No, you're an Amazon seller. We don't want you to sell our products. We already have enough, or any of the other numerous reasons that vendors use to not sell to resellers. Thank them for the opportunity. Leave your card with them and get theirs. Follow up with the vendor. Make sure you follow up not only after the show and see if you can solve those same pain points that I talked about, but keep that card, because even though you might not get into a vendor at that time, at that show, I still use that card and I leverage and I go back to that vendor in following years when I go to the same show, or if it's a show that happens biannually, I go back to them every single time I have the opportunity to meet with them. Because after I find out what their pain points are, I'm tracking that and I'm figuring out if anyone has solved that for them or if they've figured it their own. Tell me, hey, we're working on we're already in the process of working with a company to solve the listings on Amazon of how bad they look, or whatever the reasoning it is. I'm following up with that, because in 6 or 12 months, if I see no improvement, you better believe I'm going back to that vendor and I'm asking, hey, you told me you had this problem before. I see it's not been fixed. Tell me more about that. Can I fix it for you? Can we talk more about that again? Because I want to really help you, and we've now lost a year of potential sales and increased performance because we haven't been able to do anything. So I put it back in their court, but I'm using their excuses as leverage to get back in with them at a later time. What it's like as a vendor. When you're at a trade show, you have to understand what these vendors are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. The trade show is an extremely busy opportunity and show all around for the vendors, as well as you as a buyer. They have very limited time, just like you do. Like I told you have to plan out your day. They're planning out theirs as well, because they have so many people that they are planning on meeting or they want to meet at a show, and again, very limited time to be able to do it. They're meeting with a lot of brick and mortar and a lot of their mass retail business. When I go to Toy Fair in New York, there are so many vendors that I'm meeting with that I can't tell you how many times they're distracted because Target walked in or Amazon walked in directly or whoever big name came in, and they need to meet with them because it's their one shot to be able to do it. So understand that they're always on edge looking for their next opportunity, and you have to understand that that can sometimes be very distracting for them, which is why I profile and do a lot of this stuff, the initial contact before the show, when they're not so flustered with what's going on around them at the actual event. There are tons of typical Amazon sellers asking to sell their brand, offering zero content and zero value. So understand that when you go in with the intention to resell their product, that's what they're thinking you are. Until you prove them otherwise, you're another Amazon seller. So you need to prove why you are not and what value you can provide above and beyond the typical Amazon seller who just wants to sell the product and make money and doesn't care about the brand itself. Very few sellers do the legwork that I'm talking about up front. Very few sellers set those appointments up before the show. Very few sellers really care about the brand success on top of their own. And that's what's really going to separate you apart from everybody else. Why having the value matters. Here are specific replies that I've received when reaching out to vendors. So I've heard in various discussions and networking with several people in the industry that, oh, well, we don't need to provide value, but just I've got cash. Cash is king. I can just buy whatever product I want. Maybe for certain vendors. Not going to say it works all the time, but more and more I'm seeing vendors give pushback from sellers who want to try to approach them with, I want to sell your product. They want to know more about you. What's your website? What do you do? Where do you sell products at? What's your experience? These are 4 examples from just one show that I went after of vendors giving me pushback of, we want more information before allowing you to sell our brand. All 4 of those I got through. I was able to sell, and I sell all 4 of those brands to this day. But had I not been able to go past this initial barrier, I wouldn't have gotten through to them. I wouldn't be selling their products. So you need to expect that they're going to be giving this pushback to you, and you need to have a way to combat it and figure out how to get around it. Because they have brands to protect, they have jobs to protect, they have brick and mortar independent retailers to protect. A lot of things are on the line for the brands that you're targeting. Present without being asked. What I mean by this is, don't wait for a vendor to tell you what they're looking for before you give them any information on your specific values that you can offer or what you see as potential room for improvement. With every vendor that I want to meet with at a show, when I have that calendar I showed you, the 10 vendors that I'm meeting with per day, I'm going to that meeting with ammunition in my pocket of things that I've identified that brand is potentially struggling with on the platform. And I'm ready to present that to them regardless if they tell me about it or not, because I want the brand to know that I've actually done the research ahead of time to look into their brand's performance, and figured out ways that we can improve their listings and improve their performance on the platform in ways that they might not even know. It gives them it sells them the fact that I really care about the brand's success, and I want to help them. Basically my biggest priority is to help them improve their stance in the marketplace above me just making a profit. It's my belief that if I can help the brand succeed, and I have them, and I really do pump a lot of time and money into doing that, the profits for me as a business owner are going to follow naturally because I'm selling the product. I'm actually working with them to enhance the brand. If I'm enhancing their brand, if I'm building sales for them, my sales and profits are also automatically going to improve as well. And I've covered a lot of these points, but one of them I want to draw specific mention to is the last one here, our competitors bidding on their own brand, because this literally just happened to me last week. I have a fairly large brand that I'm going after right now that does about $5 million a year on the platform alone, and does zero in terms of PPC or any kind of advertising on the platform for their brand. When I found their brand on the platform and I searched their specific brand to pull their products, most of the items on search page 1 are their competitors who are bidding on the keywords that describe the brand that I'm after. They're bidding on my brand to sell a different one. So the results of the search are completely backwards from what they should be. When I search, brand ABC, I should be getting brand ABC on the first page, not brand DEF mixed into every other listing. So I had to bring that up to them and show them that we need to combat that because they're missing out on a lot of sales opportunity by not getting in front of that option. So talking about vendor value add examples, I get asked about this a lot. What are things that I can offer to vendors? And here's the honest truth is there is not a unique list of vendor value adds that I can give to you that's a surefire way for you to get into brands and have success, because a lot of it comes down to the relationship that you have. A lot of it comes down to what you're able to offer. Some of you might not be able to do some of the things I've listed here, and that's okay. And some of you might have value adds that you're thinking of in your head or that you've used before that work for you that I don't have up here that maybe don't work for my business, and that's totally fine. So I tell people when they're looking for ways to provide value is to have that discussion with the brand owner, figure out what they're after, really engage them in conversation, and figure out what ways, based on what feedback you're getting, you have the capability of offering to not only that brand, but everybody else you target. So some of the things that I specifically offer to my brands that I go after, having that logistics, that warehouse setup available, or if you don't have a warehouse, having a 3PL, having an actual physical location to receive products versus requiring it to your vendors ship directly into Amazon for you. Shipping into Amazon for us as sellers may seem easy, but to a vendor who's not familiar with it, it can be a painstaking and very daunting process. So if you require them to do this and they're not set up for it, you might not have the ability to buy from them. So having that warehouse or having that 3PL that has that experience is sometimes very critical. Understanding the Amazon sales data, being able to explain to vendors how the sales on Amazon work, how they can increase their overall ranking, how they can increase their conversions, what the reviews mean on Amazon, explaining all that to them and really showing them how that really can drive up their sales, sometimes critically important. They're focused on their brand and their business and building up their portfolio. They're not focused on understanding the Amazon platform. Some of them are because it's becoming very, very important part of their success, but they're not subject matter experts like you and I are. Give them the data that they're looking for and help them understand the process. Educating the brands about the 1P, 3P issue. So a lot of brands that I see, they sell both 3P and 1P. And as you probably know, a brand doing this oftentimes will have a lot of issues with the price going down because Amazon 1P and 3P playing in the same sandbox usually doesn't bode very well for the brand owner. So explain to them about the potential pitfalls with that. Optimizing listings of PPC, that's a given. If you have the ability to do this and you understand how that works and you can run campaigns for them, use different use different advertising like headline ads or anything of that matter, that's a given. It's usually increases conversion and traffic quite well. Launching new products, getting exclusives. So what I mean by this is not going up to them and saying, hey, can I have an exclusive for this one particular product or this one particular item? What I mean by that is finding a product that sells really, really well. For example, this clicker here, and saying, hey, this gray clicker sells really well on Amazon. You only have this in this one option. What about making this in black? And then I want the exclusive for that black one because I'm now investing the time and money to source that product under your brand, of course, but to bring that minimum order quantity in. So I want the exclusive to be able to sell that product. And usually they're okay with that because you're not competing with anybody else on that same product. They don't have to worry about you undercutting the price and killing the brick and mortars who are also selling the product because they don't have it. But I'm doing that because I have a proven success of one product already that sells really well. And by just making a small change like the color and making it a variation or anything like that in the listing, I can usually drive quite a bit of traffic to that one product that I now have an exclusive on. So we've done this with several of the brands that we work with today. And of course, showing your brand's success, showing your brands the success that you've had with other brands. So if you have a success story or brands that will give you a testimonial on something that they've already worked with you on or something that you've improved for them, by all means, put that on your website, print it out in a little brochure for them or explain to them on what you've done. Because one of the best ways to get into a brand is to show success you've had in the past and really sell yourself with the opportunity that you've uncovered and also solved with someone else that they might also know. You need to expect vendors are going to push back to you. So this is an email that I got literally last week from one of the brands that I want to go after. And there's 3 questions that brand came back with me to me on. They said, how do we turn off Amazon successfully because they sell directly to Amazon right now? What is your intended marketing spend? They want to know how much I'm going to pump into their brand as a whole right now. And also, can you obtain a bank letter confirming that you have the funds available to operate this business? This is a pretty big brand. So above and beyond just being able to be an Amazon expert, they want to know if I have the funds to be able to buy this product because I can talk a big game and understand and tell them that I understand the platform. But at the end of the day, if I can't buy their product and I don't have enough money to operate this business that they've built right now, it's not going to help them. So understand that the vendors, even after you have that initial discussion, and even after you've maybe met them at a show or have gone to their office or whatever the case may be, there's going to be still pushback, and you have to know how to handle that pushback and how to get past this part if you want to build that relationship and get it going. Let's talk really quickly about MAP and its problems. As you know, minimum advertised pricing is set by the manufacturer, sometimes enforced by the distribution partners. It's impossible to enforce on Amazon. Amazon is not going to enforce MAP. They do not enforce MAP. They specifically state this in their terms of service. And a lot of times it leads to upset brand owners. So what this means to you is being an authorized distribution or sales partner is very important. You are working with the brand directly. You understand their sales process, their sales cycle. You understand if they have a MAP policy in place, if they're actually enforcing it, if it's working well, if anything needs to be tweaked. And you understand that if you have a problem with the Amazon platform, you'll know that you have that relationship and you have that ability to work with the brand owner to rectify that issue or any issues that occur on Amazon's platform. Give yourself an out in your agreement or make one. So what I have in all of my MAP agreements, if they don't already have it in there, I add it. What I add here is if the MAP policy they have in place is violated for more than 21 days at a time, I have the option to return the products to them for full credit. If they're confident in their MAP policy and they think it's going to work, then I expect them to be able to uphold it, and I want the out to return the product and get out of my investment if they fail to be able to do so. Protecting yourself, understand that face-to-face is more important than phone or email. This is why I really go heavily on the you must attend trade shows route, because that face-to-face interaction is key. Honesty matters. Denials will happen. Be honest about what you do, what platforms you sell on. Understand that not every vendor will accept you, and that's okay. Move on to the next one. Provide your value to vendors. Enhance their brand. Their brand success should be your #1 target. Yours will follow automatically afterwards. Skip the opportunities that are risky, regardless of profit margin potential. If you're not comfortable with the product that you're selling or the category, you're not familiar with it, don't go into it just because you have the opportunity. Make sure you're comfortable with what you're selling. And open new sales channels for vendors. If they're already selling on the Amazon platform, if that's not an option for you, but if Walmart is, if Groupon is, if Jet is, open those sales channels for those vendors. Most likely they'll be open to those options, and a lot of times they'll have the exclusive rights to those channels as well. Really quick, I just want to tell you about Own Your Breakthrough. This is a collaborative wholesale community that we just launched in March. It is not a course. It is like I said, it's a collaborative wholesale community where you have access to myself and my business partner, Greg, to collaborate on any of your wholesale questions that you have when you are trying to build up your wholesale business. So anything related to finding vendors, profiling products, warehousing and logistics, any questions that you might have, we're there to be your dedicated resources one-on-one. You have collaboration access to the other members in the group as well to have that discussion, because we have a private Facebook group for this particular offering. And we also have partnerships with a number of vendors in the space that sellers use on a day-to-day basis. So NAS Insurance over there, my buddies over there, are one of our partners for Amazon suspension policy, but we have a lot of other offerings as well: Inventory Lab, TaxJar, Merchant Words, all of them that you can see in here, offering some unique discounts to sellers by being a member of this program. One of the biggest ones that I know that sellers really like is the Uline option, free shipping for orders over $300. So if Uline is a big pain point for you right now because their shipping is extremely expensive, here's one way to get out of that as well. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I'll be around, of course, during the show if you have any additional questions.